Oliver Sacks, in Uncle Tungsten, Memories of a Chemical Childhood, you refer to your unhappy experience in an English boarding school during the war. What was the worst of that experience and what impact has it had on the rest of your life?
I think it was a rather sort of Dickensian school, or rather like the school which Orwell described. But my whole generation, 3 or 4 million kids, were evacuated at the beginning of the war because parents were told to get them out of London, to get them out of the major cities. This sometimes worked out well. I think with me there was some sense of having been sent away or abandoned by my parents. There was a particularly vicious, probably rather sadistic headmaster. I mean, terms like abuse had not entered, but I think it probably was rather abusive. And I never found it easy to sort of complain. And so I sort of stay there. But it's, I mean, it was certainly sort of traumatic, and I think it induced a sort of timidity and maybe some masochism. On the other hand, I think it gave me an intense need to find sanity and order when I got out of that situation. And for me, this was very much to be found in science and chemistry in particular, in these wise uncles of mine.
I've read that your older brother Michael went through the same boarding school experiences and brutality and later became psychotic. Was there a direct connection to him, do you think?
Well, certainly the content of his early psychoses was very much about he used to speak about a sadistic God, a flagellomaniac providence. This was, as it were, the figure of the headmaster, amplified and cosmified. I think that I think he was probably more vulnerable than I was, and the experience may have pushed him over. I really don't know, and we've always wondered, and he has always wondered, how much has some innate disposition and how much trauma.
And you've referred in the past to your own neurosis and your twice weekly consultations with a psychoanalyst for 35 years. Yeah. What benefit have you derived from that, and where would you be without it?
Dead. I used to be very, very destructive. I was always having accidents. I took various drugs. None of my friends expected me to live to 30, let alone 40, and now I'm in my 70th year. So I think to the extent that I've survived and been moderately creative and moderately happy, at least I feel grateful to this man who sort of knows my dark side and can caution me against it to some extent and comprehend it.
And what happens if you aren't able to make the contact with him? You travel around the world frequently.
Well, you know, August is a bad month for analysans. Actually, it's safer to travel in August. Then you're not missing the analyst.
You've lived in New York since the 60s. I know you were away on September 11 last year, but it must have impacted on you greatly nonetheless.
Yes, my office in my apartment is pretty close to the World Trade Center. The atmosphere in New York was quite extraordinary when one got back, and there was a sort of comradeship and community I've never seen there before. But also great fear if someone made a sudden movement. You know, people worried in public places. The smell of burning and of bodies went on for 3 months, and sometimes plumes of this evil smelling smoke went sort of right up into the Bronx, 20 miles away. I went down to ground zero a couple of times. It did and it didn't remind me of London and the Blitz. Perhaps physically it did, but in the war one knew who one's enemy was and what it was about, and one had Churchill as a sort of great moral force, and the total surprise of this has terrified people.
You are a gifted observer of the human condition. What impact have you noted over the 12 months since, particularly on the community of Manhattan?
Something which is understandable but rather frightening, I think, has been the wave of super patriotism. One's car was likely to be smashed if it didn't have an American flag. I don't have an American flag on my car. The only thing I do have a little thing saying American Fern Society, but that's because I like ferns.
You must have thought about an essential contradiction in yourself, if I'm right about this. An intensely shy man, but nonetheless one who has thrust himself into the public gaze through his work. Do you ever wonder about that?
Yes, indeed, and it's although there can sometimes be a sort of paradox in that one can sometimes be comfortable in front of 1,000 people and even intimate with 1,000 people, whereas not with one or two. Maybe some of this has to do with performer. I think there's a role of teacher, of explorer, of writer, which is relatively easy to have.
What are the things you treasure most and the things that you regret most?
The things I treasure most are my friends, and the opportunity to indulge curiosity and to communicate it. What I regret most, not so much the things I've done as the things I haven't done. I think I've spent my life on the whole at a certain distance from people. I regret the absence of intimate relationships.
Do you think that can yet come for you?
I am absurdly, in my 70th year, I still hope.
Oliver Sacks, thanks for talking with us.
Thank you very much.